Okay, the characteristics of culture. Culture is learned. So, una sa lahat, ang kultura ay hindi usapin ng lahi. So, ito ay natutunan, hindi nadadala sa ating mga genes. Okay? So, ang mga kultura ay karaniwang ipinahayag sa pamamagitan ng mga simbolo at sistema ng wika. Therefore, ang mga miyembro ng lipunan o komunidad ay natututo ng kanilang kultura sa pamamagitan ng symbolic gesture at wika. Okay? Gesture and language. So, culture is learned. Ito yung unang characteristics of culture. Pangalawa. So culture is learned from pala ito. Okay, so cultural practices are transmitted by society through enculturation. Okay, narinig nyo naman yung term na enculturation. So mental structures or schemas are created in the individual as a result of the process of enculturation. These schemas are then used by people to make sense of their world and in dealing with other people. In sociology, this is called socialization. So, ang mga kultura na gawi ay pinapadala ng lipunan sa pamamagitan ng enculturation. Ang mental structures or schema ay nilikha sa individual bilang resulta ng proseso ng enculturation. So, ang mga schema na ito ay ginagamit ng mga tao upang magkaroon ng kahulugan sa kanilang mundo at sa pakikitungo sa ibang mga tao. So, sa sosyolohiya, tinatawag itong socialization. Okay? Ang pangalawa, culture is shared. Kindly read. Napostpone kanina. Ronaldin. Kindly read, Ronaldin. Culture is shared. Hello. Okay. How about Jamir? Gusto mo ba magbasa, Jamir? Culture is shared.
Culture is shared.
Okay, go.
A person is born into a specific society or community with its own shared culture. It doesn't mean that the individual is helpless in changing and reinventing this pre-given culture. What it entails is simply that no one is born with a fully developed culture apparatus in his or her head. While individual differences among members of a society vary, nevertheless, they share a
Okay, large number of beliefs and practices. Thank you, Shamir. So, culture is shared. Ang isang tao ay pinanganak sa isang partikular na lipunan o komunidad na may sariling kultura. Hindi ito nangangahulugan na ang individual ay walang magawa sa pagbabago at muling pag-imbento ng dati nang naibigay na kultura. Iba-iba ang pagkakaiba ng mga individual sa mga membro ng isang lipunan. Nagbabahagi ito ng malaking bilang ng paniniwala, ng gawi, beliefs, or practices. Okay. While majority of the people in a predominantly Catholic country may attend Mass regularly, they also have varying interpretations of the Catholic doctrines. What is important is that an average member of a society or group knows the belief system of his or her society, or he or she is able to make a rational account of such beliefs. Okay, sa mga Catholic doctrines. Culture is dynamic and changing. Okay, we'll read. Jerome? Oh, Jerome.
Culture is dynamic and changing. Culture is diverse and plural. Franz Boas was the most important figure in introducing the idea of the plurality of historically conditioned cultures into anthropology. Franz Boas firmly placed all cultures on equal par. He rejected the notion that equated cultural superiority with technological advancement.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. So, culture is dynamic and changing. So, ang kultura ay magkakaiba at maramihan, diverse and plural. According kay Franz Boas, it was the most important figure in introducing the idea of plurality and historically conditioned cultures into anthropology. Matatag na inilagay niya ang lahat ng mga kultura sa pantay na antas at tinanggihan ang paniniwala na tinutumbas ang superiority ng kultura sa pagsulong ng teknolohiya or technological advancement. Pagbabago, dynamic and changing. So, many Western anthropologists believed in the evolutionary superiority of Western civilization, and this has often lent credibility to colonial projects of Western countries. Colonialism was justified in the name of civilizing the natives whose culture is supposed to be in the stage of savagery. Okay, tama ba? Savagery. Okay. So today, however, in the era of globalization, transborder migration, and the unprecedented growth of internet-mediated communication, the reality of diversity of culture is hard to deny. Even when one talks about national culture, the homogeneous character of culture is contested. So, about Western civilization, colonialism, growth of the internet, communication, and others. Okay, next is history and cultural identity. Certainly, the current usage of the term cultural identity is contextual and will have different meanings in different contexts. This is especially true when one migrates to another country. And depending upon the context, he or she will be culturally identified as of ethnic, racial, national identity, and etc. So, cultural identity. So, okay. Ito ay totoo lalo na kapag ang isang tao ay lumipat sa ibang bansa. At depende ito sa konteksto or context na siya ay makilala sa kultura bilang etniko, lahi, pambansa at iba pang pagkakakilanlan. This will argue that Filipino cultural identity is still something in the making within the greater purview of the Western culture, a positive cultural identity which Filipinos can be proud of and which foreigners can affirm in favorable light. So ito ay natwira ng cultural identity ng Filipino ay isang bagay pa rin sa paggawa sa mas malawak na saklaw ng Western culture. A positive cultural identity na may pagmamalaki ng mga Pilipino at maaaring pagtibayin ng mga dayuhan. Okay, history. On the other hand, ang meaning ng history, okay, nakakalagay dito, it is defined as the study of the records of the past. This includes written records, archaeological artifacts, ruins, and even traditions and literature orally transmitted from generation to generation. Cultural identity is that aspect or aspects of our culture that the people are proud to identify themselves with and which foreigners usually mention with awe or admiration. So sabi dito, ang cultural identity ay ang aspeto ng isang kultura na pinagmamalaki ng isang tao na makilala ang kanilang sarili at kadalasang binabanggit ng mga dayuhan na may pagkamangha sa atin or with admiration. History, okay? Defined as the study of records of the past. Cultural identity connotes something positive, admirable, and enduring. It also connotes an ethnic or a racial underpinning. The Ibanag culture is ethnic, while the Ibanag as a Filipino or Malay race is racial. In ordinary, everyday speech, however, ethnic and racial are sometimes used interchangeably. Okay? Ginagamit daw na magkapalitan daw minsan ang ethnic and racial. Okay? A nation generally consists of different tribes, and so there is a tribal cultural identity and a national cultural identity. It is possible in a war-torn country, as in a civil war, or in a post-colonial nation, that there are only tribal cultural identities without a national cultural identity. So on each tribe may want succession or complete independence. Okay, so this will examine the role that history plays in the molding of a people's cultural identity. In particular, it will sketchily trace the evolution of the Filipino national culture and identify aspects of culture that would explain the present state of the Filipino culture. So about the culture of the Philippines. History and culture, okay? Next big slide, okay? The term culture may be defined broadly as the sum total of what a tribe or group of people produce, material or non-material. So nabanggit din kanina, di ba? Okay, mga tangible and non-tangible. So is producing and will probably be producing in the future. What they produce, consciously or unconsciously, could be tools, clothing, cooking utensils, weaponry, technologies, unexpected outcomes, mores, or codes as in religion and the like. And they will continue producing these things probably with more improved efficiency, design, or style and finesse. The make can be distinctly identified, generally speaking, with their tribe or their period in history. So, ang ginagawa nila, okay, sinasadya man o hindi, ay ito ay maaaring maging kasangkapan, damit, kagamitan sa pagluto, armas, teknolohiya, at hindi inaasahang resulta, kaugalian o mga code gaya ng sa relihiyon at iba pa. At magpapatuloy sila sa paggawa ng mga bagay na ito na may mas pinahusay na kahusayan, disenyo o estilo. And then, generally speaking, tribe or the period in history. Okay. Madami tayong author na nagsasabi about culture, di ba? So, according kay Edward Taylor, 1974, looks at culture as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any capabilities and habits acquired by a man as a member of society. So, tinitignan ni Edward Taylor ang kultura bilang masalimuot daw na kabuuan na kinabibilangan ng kaalaman, paniniwala, sining, moralidad, batas, kaugalian at anumang mga kakayahan at gawin na nakuha ng tao bilang isang miyembro ng lipunan, member of the society. Another author, according to Albert Dundane, 1964, talks of historicity as emanating from humans, and to my mind, so is culturicide. Aspects of culture can be acquired, but once acquired, they are adapted, reconstituted to fit the existing cultural terrain, either of the individual or the group, or reproduced. So, binanggit ni Albert Dundane, ang pagiging makasaysayan bilang nagmumula sa mga tao, gayon din ang culturicide. Ang mga aspeto ng kultura ay maaring makuha, ngunit sa sandaling nakuha ang mga ito ay inaangkop, muling nabuo upang mangkop sa umiiral na kultural na lupain, either of the individual or the group, or reproduce, or muling ginawa. Next, cultural outcomes as in habits, norms, plus functions, and customs are sometimes unexpectedly, unintentionally, or unconsciously produced. Ang mga kinalabasan sa kultura tulad ng mga gawi o habits, pamantayan at mga parusa at kaugalian ay minsan na hindi nasahan, hindi sinasadya yun nga, hindi nga sinasadya. Okay? Next, the Philippine situation. Okay, sitwasyon ng Philippines ngayon. So, for groups of Filipinos in the Philippine situation, there are many tribes, and in the hinterlands, meaning remote or less developed parts of a country, yun the meaning na hinterlands, we can still find tribal identities. Small groups of people wearing their tribal clothes and doing their tribal ways. They are Filipinos in the cultural citizenship sense. Okay, that is, their national identity is defined in terms of the provisions of the Constitution, namely, they are native inhabitants or born here with indigenous parents of the country. Okay, mag-recall muna tayo. So, pag sinabi nating urban, okay, kumbaga differentiate natin ang urban sa rural. Okay, who can differentiate? Ay, ayun ko lang nakakita. Hello, Alexander. Good morning. Okay,
Ma'am,
okay, go. Mofil, urban and rural.
ma'am, wait lang ma'am. I-recall ko. Ma'am, yung urban areas, yun po ba yung sa mga cities like Manila po, tas yung rural po, yun po yung mga medyo liblib, tas medyo malayo na po sa city.
Okay, tama. Okay, very good. So, urban high standard of living or fast-paced life. Then rural, low standard of living or peaceful life. Okay, thank you kasi matatako natin yan later. Okay. Okay, next. So kindly read. Okay, who wants to read? For number 1. Okay, go Mafil.
For many of them, their cultural citizenship does not mean anything at all. The Atas, for example, they know that their ancestors have been living in this country
Okay, thank you, Mafil. So, ang una daw, nabanggit dito ay yung mga ATAS. Nakakita na ba kayo ng mga ATAS? Along the road, usually siguro. Nakita na kayo ng mga ATAS, di ba? Parang ang chill-chill lang ng mga life nila, no? Wala silang kaproblema. Okay, so sabi dito, ang mga ATAS para sa kanila, ang kanila pagkamamamayan sa kultura ay walang anumang kahulugan. Alam nila na ang kanilang mga ninuno ay naninirahan sa mga bansang ito ilang siglo na ang nakakaraan. So matagal na daw pala sila. Mga ATAS. Okay? Number 2, hindi nga, kung gusto magbasa ng mahaba-haba. Okay, Jamie, gusto mo? Number 2. You read. Tingnan para ma-practice yung reading skills nyo.
Po.
Number 2. Kindly read number 2, Shamir. Thank you.
We can also find a second group of tribes in the Philippines whose cultural identities have been touched by modernization, which in this context is the same as westernization in a minimal way. Some of them send their children to school and they are generally aware of their cultural citizenship. They go to urban areas in either tribal or modern clothes, but when they go home, they wear their tribal attire. They identify themselves more as a tribe rather than as a Filipino.
Okay, thank you, Shamir. Tama. So, ang pangalawang grupo ng tribo sa Pilipinas na ang pagkakakilanlan ng kultura ay naantig ng modernization. Nasa kontekstong ito ay kapareho ng minimal na paraan, okay? So, ang ilan sa kanila ay nagpadala ng kanilang mga anak sa paaralan at sa pangkalahatan ay alam nila ang kanilang kultural na pagkamamamayan. Pumupunta sila sa mga lungsod o bayan, okay, urban areas, nabanggit ni Phil kanina. Sa alinman sa pantribo, modernong damit, ngunit kapag sila ay pag umuwi na daw sila, sinusuot nila ang kanilang pantribo na kasuotan. Mas kinikilala nila ang kanilang sarili bilang isang tribo kaysa bilang isang Filipino. So, they identify themselves more as a tribe rather than as a Filipino. Okay, number 3. Jerome, kindly read.
A third group of tribes are those that are more modernized compared to the second group. They send their children to school and when they visit the urban areas, especially the big cities, they wear modern clothes and adapt to the ways of modernity. Their identity is defined in terms of their religious persuasion. Some of the educated attend parties and dance in disco houses. They generally identify themselves as Filipinos. But when they go home to their native places, they adjust themselves against to their native or religious ways. There are sectors in this group that are spurn being called Filipinos simply for a different label such as Moro or something else.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. So, third group of tribes. So, ang tatlong pangkat ng mga tribo ay mga mas modernisado kumpara sa pangalawang pangkat. So, pinaaral nila ang kanilang mga anak at kapag bumibisita sila sa mga urban na lugar, urban areas, lalo na sa So, lalo lalo na sa malalaking lungsod, nagsusuot sila ng mga modernong damit at nakikibagay sa mga paraan ng modernidad. So ang kanilang pagkakakilanlan ay tinutukoy sa mga tuntunin ng kanilang relihiyosong panghihikayat. So ang ilan sa mga edukado ay dumadalo daw sa mga party, gano'n, at yung mga disco house. So sa pangkalahatan, kinikilala nila ang kanilang sarili bilang mga Pilipino. Ngunit kapag umuwi sila sa kanilang mga sariling lugar, inaayos nila ang kanilang sarili sa kanilang katutubong o relihiyon. So may mga sektor sa grupo ito na tumatanggi sa pagiging Pilipino at mas gusto ang ibang label gaya ng Moro o iba pa. Yung sabi dito. Prefer a different label such as Moro or something else. Okay. Oh no, bakit naging tatlo na lang tayo? With the others, okay? Tatlo na lang ang students. Bale, tatlo lang. Okay, I will read. The last group of tribes is the highly modernized or westernized. They are the largest group consisting of various tribes such as the Tagalog, Visayan, Ilocano, Kapampangan, and others. Their common perspective is outward or global, rather than inward or national. The nationalists or the inward-looking Filipinos in this group are a minority. So, ang huling pangkat ng grupo, tribo, ay highly modernized na or westernized. Sila ang malaking pangkat na binubuo na iba't ibang tribo tulad ng Tagalog, Visayan, Ilocano, Kapampangan at iba pa. Ang kanilang karaniwang pananaw ay panlabas o pandaigdigan kaysa sa loob o pambansa. Ang mga nasyonalista o ang mga Pilipinong nasa loob ng grupong ito ay minorya or minority. So according to Renato Constantino, 1966, identified them in the article, The Filipinos in the Philippines. As the genuine Filipinos, the nationalists are proud of their cultural citizenship and their cultural heritage. They want the country to become a first world in the coming centuries. Diba? So, kinilala sila ni Renato Constantino sa artikulo, ang mga Pilipino sa Pilipinas bilang mga tunay na Pilipino. Ipinagmamalaki ng mga nasyonalista ang kanilang pagkamamamayan sa kultura at ang kanilang pamana sa kultura. Nais nila maging unang mundo or first world in the coming centuries. Mga darating na siglo. Okay, the Filipino majority, globalization, and trans workers. The majority look at globalization is in a wider perspective. The probable risks are relegated to the traditional fatalistic or bahala na attitude of the Filipinos. Okay? Usually common sa atin yan. Lagi natin sinasabi, di ba? Bahala na, ganito, ganyan. Di ba? So, those who have successfully immigrated still long for their native land and continue to send financial assistance to their families and loved ones back home. The majority of the Filipinos right now view globalization as not only transnational corporations, which establish food chains through franchises and construct factories and industries in other countries. Oh, may number dito. Okay, but also transnational workers, or in short, trans workers. Oh, especially transient, not immigrant ones during work in foreign lands. The overseas Filipino workers are one of the example. Okay. So transnational workers, trans workers. So ang pinaka-example nito is ang OFW, the overseas Filipino workers. Okay, political scene. In the course of the political development of the country, only one man, Manuel L. Quezon, correctly diagnosed the unhealthy political drift of the nation. All political parties had one common platform, the immediate, complete, and absolute independence of the Philippines. And the main task of the political opposition was to fossilize or critique the political actions of the party in power, not constructively, that is, by offering better alternative courses of action, but destructively so as to debilitate it before the electorate, and so that the opposition party would itself become the future party in power. So, sabi sa takbo ng politikal, napagulan naman sa isang tao lamang, si Manuel L. Quezon. Ang wastong nasuri at hindi malusog na pag-agos ng politika ng bansa. So lahat ng partido politikal ay may iisang plataforma ang agad, ganap at ganap na kalayaan ng Pilipinas. Immediate, complete, and absolute independence of the Philippines. Okay, the making of cultural identity, damage culture. Sabi dito, damage culture, so the present cultural situation has been described as the result of a damaged culture, according to Follows 1987. Where there is lack of nationalism and where what is public is viewed in low esteem without much national pride. The argument is that the indigenous cultures of the mainstream tribes have been supplanted with Christian and Western values brought about by Spanish and American colonialism. Damaged culture, ang kasalukuyang kultural na sitwasyon ay inilarawan bilang resulta ng isang nasira na kultura. Yun, di ba? Damage na eh. So, kung saan may kakulangan ng nasyonalismo at ang publiko ay tinitignan sa mababang pagpapahalaga without much national pride. Ang argumento ay ang katutubong kultura ng mga pangunahing tribo ay napalitan ng mga Kristiyano at Western values na dulot ng kolonyalismo Espanyol at American. Okay. The native political system, the barangay, was of different ideological persuasions, two of which were fully documented, the autocratic and the democratic. The autocratic, of course, was authoritarian or despotic, while the democratic had a jury-judicial system and a consultative legislative system. The dato or chieftain always consulted the elders. Spanish colonialism practiced the autocratic system, while American colonialism trained the Filipinos in the democratic system. So, ang katutubong sistemang pampolitika, ang barangay, ay may, okay, running out of time na naman, sabi ni Zoom. So, mag-send ulit ako ng link later, ha? Pag nabiglang namatay. Medyo mabagal. Okay. So, ang katutubong sistemang pampolitika, ang barangay, ay may iba't ibang ideological na paghihikayat. Dalawa sa mga ito ay ganap na dokumentado, ang autocratic at ang democratic. Nagahang yung internet connection ko. No. So, ang autocratic ay authoritarian, habang ang democratic ay mayroong judicial system ng hurado at isang sistemang pambatasan. Ang dato o pinuno ay laging sumasangguni sa mga matatanda. Ang Spanish colonialism ay nagsagawa ng autocratic system, habang ang American colonialism ay nagsanay sa mga Pilipino sa demokratikong sistema. Okay. Wait lang po. Mag-water lang ako. So, yan yung end slide ng lesson proper. Pero hindi pa yan yung total na last slide. May mga next slide pa, okay? Ang tanong ko is, what are the characteristics of culture? Yung tatlong pinaka-main na characteristics of culture. Okay? Sino sasagot?
Ma'am.
Okay, go.
Ma'am, culture is learned, culture is shared, and culture is dynamic and changing.
Okay, very good. Tama. So, kailangan nating pagkatandaan na lagi, culture is learned, culture is shared, culture is dynamic and changing. Okay, very good. Okay. For our follow-up activity, I will read the following questions, then choose the best answer. Okay, ha? Sabihin niyo sa akin kung ano yung best answer, then explain natin. Okay? Number 1, which of the following statement is not true about culture? A, culture is a way of life. B, culture may be influenced by internal and external factors in the society. C, culture is innate to every human being at the time of birth. One knows his cultural orientation, and letter D, culture may become dynamic. It may change over a period of time. Okay? Sino makakapagbigay ng sagot? Okay, go mo, Phil.
Ma'am, letter B.
Letter B, culture may be influenced by internal and external factors in the society. But actually, okay, that's a nice try, Mufil, but the actual answer is letter C. May kulang lang na panuwan mo sa akin. So letter C ang totoong sagot. Culture is innate to every human being. At the time of birth, one knows his cultural orientation. Actually, ang tanong dito is not true. Hindi totoo. Hindi natin napansin yung not true about culture. So, culture is referred to as a way of life that is passed from one generation to another. It includes codes of manners, dress, language, religion, rituals, and art. So, human beings acquire culture through the learning processes of enculturation and socialization, which is shown by the diversity of cultures across societies. It can also be defined as the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, which contains language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. Okay? So number 1, letter C. Hindi daw kabilang. Kasi tama naman, culture is a way of life. Culture may be influenced by internal and external factors in the society. Okay? Ito ang sagot kasi parang siya. Hindi siya belong. Okay? Then letter D, culture may become dynamic. It may change over a period of time. Okay? Yung sinabi ni Mufil kanina na nag-change. Culture is change. Number 2, which of the following statement best relates to the notion that Philippines is a country with a very unique cultural diversity and ethnicity? Letter A, Filipinos are disunited because of different cultural and social variations. Letter B, ethnicity and diversity enable Filipinos to adopt and practice a very wide range of cultural practices and beliefs. Letter C, cultural variation in the country has never been an issue to establish cooperation and unity. And letter D, Filipino behaves and actuates according to the state of their culture. Okay, we'll give you time to analyze first. Okay, go, Shamir. What's your answer?
Letter B.
Oh, letter B. Diversity and diversity. Adopt and practice a range of cultural practices and beliefs. So, the correct answer is letter C. Thank you, Shamir. That's a nice try. Okay. Letter C, cultural variation in the country has never been an issue to establish cooperation and unity. Kasi kahit na ang kultura ng Pilipinas ay sari-sari na mahigit na 80 native group sa bansa, hindi ito kailanman naging issue. So may pagkakaisa sa kabila ng mga pagkakaiba-iba ng kultura at ang mga Pilipino ay parang iba't ibang tribo na pinipiling maging isang bansa. So even though Philippine culture is very diverse with 80 native groups in the country, it has never been an issue, sabi. Okay, thank you. Number 3. Okay, we have 5 questions. Number 3. Ella is a youth volunteer in her community. She taught street children how to read and write. She is connected in various non-government organizations that help the marginalized and the poorest sector of the society by doing charity work such as feeding and livelihood programs. What Filipino character Ella is demonstrating? A, ability to survive or resilience. B, hard work and industry. C, flexibility, adaptability, and creativity. Or D, pakikipagkapwa-tao. Okay, go, Mufil.
Sure, pakikipagkapwa-tao, letter D.
Ah, you got it. Tama. Okay, correct. Mufil, pakikipagkapwa-tao. So, in the Filipino culture, pakikipagkapwa-tao means relating to someone else as a fellow human being. Ella exemplifies this because she is concerned with those in the lower social classes. She recognizes them as equal human beings who deserve support programs and are worthy of a decent lifestyle. Tama, pakikipagkapwa-tao. Okay, number 4. Which of the following statement is true to achieve national development and progress? A, each and every Filipino must take its part and contribute towards national development. Letter B, we must support all programs and initiatives of the government instead of criticizing. Letter C, cultural diversity shall be considered as a stepping stone towards progress rather than looking at as a hindrance. Letter D, Filipinos should learn to change their culture and follow the culture of rich countries. Okay, sino gusto magsagot? Sagot Jerome. Gusto mo magsagot, Jerome? You can read and analyze first. Haba ng choices, ano?
Sure.
Okay, go.
Sure, letter C.
Okay. Pwede din siya, pero ang pinaka-best na answer niya is ang letter B. Okay? Thank you for trying. So letter B, we must support all programs and initiatives of the government instead of criticizing. Okay? So if we all support the programs and initiatives of our government, it's a great advantage. It's a great advantage for us to achieve a national development progress. Government program aimed at raising standards of achievement in areas of any social and economic disadvantage by providing additional support to groups of people and other partners to work collaboratively. So that's letter B. The correct answer is letter B. Thank you, Mufil, for trying. Okay. Number 5. The last. How did Filipinos show the character of being resilient in times of calamities? Very common sa atin to. Lagi tayong natamaan ng bagyo. Okay, A. Filipinos still smile even they lost their home in a typhoon. B. In times of calamities, Filipinos never forget to pray to God. Letter C. Filipinos are